Uninvited brother shows up at my wedding. I reveal his affair with my ex, and his marriage falls apart. My relationship with my family has always been complicated. I'm close with my parents, who've supported me through a lot, but things with my brother have always been tense. Growing up, we were never the type of siblings who could rely on each other. He often went his own way, and I went mine. Still, family is family, and we made it work, until something happened that changed everything. It started with someone I thought I loved. We were together for a while, and I trusted him completely. But later I found out he'd been hiding a dark secret. He and my brother had been involved behind my back. The betrayal wasn't just a typical breakup. It felt like a punch in the gut from two people I should have been able to trust the most. The hurt lingered for years. It's hard to describe how betrayal like that cuts through you, how it breaks down the very idea of family and trust. After that, my relationship with my brother became almost non-existent. Every family gathering felt awkward. Every look from him reminded me of what he'd done. There was just too much pain, and moving forward felt impossible. When I got engaged, I made it clear that I didn't want my brother at my wedding. This day was supposed to be about happiness, about starting a new chapter with someone who genuinely loved and respected me. Having him there would have been a constant reminder of the past, of the betrayal I was still trying to heal from. I wanted peace on my wedding day, not tension. My parents weren't thrilled with my decision. They wanted the family together, hoped maybe this day could help us move on. But I couldn't forget, and I couldn't forgive. I thought they understood my reasons and would respect my choice. However, as I would soon learn, they had other plans that would turn my carefully planned day upside down. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, everything felt like a dream. There was a real buzz of excitement. I was surrounded by friends and family who made me feel supported and loved. My fiancé and I poured our hearts into the details, making sure every part of the day would be exactly how we'd imagined. Special, peaceful, and free from any of the tensions that had followed us in the past. My parents, in particular, were really involved. They'd call me every day, offering to help with little things, like organizing the seating or confirming last-minute details with vendors. I appreciated how much they wanted to make this day perfect for us, and I tried to keep things light and positive whenever we talked. But in a few of those conversations, I noticed something. A gentle nudge, a subtle question here and there. My mom would casually mention how nice it would be if everyone could be there. And by everyone, she meant my brother. My dad would sometimes bring him up, saying things like, family is everything, or, wouldn't it be something if all of us were together on your big day? They never outright said I should invite him, but the message was clear enough. They still hoped, in some way, that he'd be part of the wedding, that the day could somehow mend our broken relationship. Every time they hinted, I tried to be gentle but firm. I'd remind them that this day was about peace and moving forward, not reopening old wounds. I wanted a fresh start with the person I loved, with the people who had been there for me through the hard times. Bringing my brother into that would have only added tension and reminded me of things I was trying to put behind me. My fiancé and I had talked about it at length, and he completely understood why I wanted to keep things simple and drama-free. As the day drew closer, everything seemed to be falling into place. The dress, the flowers, the venue, everything was perfect, exactly how I'd pictured it. I felt a mixture of excitement and relief, knowing that soon I'd be walking down the aisle without the weight of past issues hanging over me. I just wanted to focus on the joy and happiness that this day was supposed to bring, surrounded by people who truly cared for us and understood what we needed. For the first time in a long time, I felt like things were going to be smooth, like the day would be peaceful, free from any unexpected surprises. I allowed myself to believe that everyone had finally respected my decision and that my parents would honor my wishes. Little did I know, there was a storm brewing behind the scenes, one that would take me completely by surprise and test the very peace I was hoping to protect. The day was finally here, and everything looked perfect. I could feel the excitement building up as I prepared to walk down the aisle, every detail just as I'd planned. The flowers were beautiful, the music was just right, and the smiles from friends and family made me feel like this day would be everything I had dreamed of. But as I glanced around the room, something caught my eye, something that didn't belong. I saw him, my brother. He was standing there, looking calm and casual, as if he had every right to be there. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I blinked, hoping maybe it was someone who just looked like him. But no, it was him. My brother, standing there uninvited and out of place. My heart sank, and shock washed over me. I couldn't believe it. The one person I had specifically chosen not to include in this day was right there, as if he were part of the family celebration. I felt a rush of anger and confusion. How could he show up here, knowing everything that had happened? But more than that, I wondered how he'd even managed to be here. As I tried to process what was happening, I turned to my parents, hoping for some kind of explanation. I didn't even have to ask. They looked guilty, as if they'd been caught in the act. My mom looked down, avoiding my gaze, and my dad mumbled something about wanting the family together, saying it was for the best. It hit me like a punch to the stomach. They'd gone behind my back, invited him without telling me, hoping I'd just accept it. A wave of betrayal and frustration flooded over me. I'd been so clear with them about why I didn't want him there, why his presence would make things harder. And yet, they chose to ignore my wishes, as if they knew better, as if my feelings didn't matter. The anger was almost too much to contain, but this was my wedding day, and I knew I couldn't let his unexpected presence ruin it for me. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to focus on what truly mattered. I looked around at my friends, my partner, everyone who had shown up out of love and support. They were here for me, and I owed it to them, and to myself, to keep calm and make it through this day. So I pushed down the frustration, holding on to whatever sense of peace I could muster, determined to not let my brother's appearance overshadow everything I'd worked so hard for. It was harder than I thought it would be, seeing him there, feeling the weight of what my parents had done, knowing they'd chosen to ignore my feelings for the sake of their idea of family unity. But this day was about new beginnings, and I decided right then that I would not let anyone take that from me. As I took my place at the altar, I tried to let the beauty of the moment sink in. I was standing next to the person I loved, about to make promises for a life we'd build together. But just over my shoulder, I could feel that shadow, my brother's presence, looming like a dark cloud. It was nearly impossible to ignore, no matter how much I tried to focus on the joy of the moment. I kept my gaze on my fiancé, who looked at me with nothing but love and excitement. His expression was a reminder of why this day mattered, of the happiness we were about to step into together. I clung to that, repeating to myself that today was about us, about our future, not about the past. But every time I caught a glimpse of my family in the crowd, that knot in my stomach would tighten. My brother was there, seated as if he belonged, as if everything was normal. I could feel a quiet anger growing within me. It wasn't just directed at him, but also at my parents for putting me in this situation. I had trusted them to respect my wishes, to give me this one day without any reminders of old wounds. Yet here I was, trying to push down frustration, while repeating vows I wanted to be fully present for. Throughout the ceremony, I kept catching my parents exchanging nervous glances. Probably afraid that I'd lose my composure, that I'd break the peaceful image they wanted for the day. I could tell they were avoiding eye contact with me, sensing my frustration even though I was doing my best to keep it together. They'd made their choice. And now we were all walking on eggshells, silently hoping to avoid a scene. But the tension was there, undeniable and thick. It was like a hum just beneath the surface, a reminder of everything I had hoped to leave behind. My brother sat quietly, watching the ceremony like any other guest. But to me, his presence felt loud and intrusive, like the echoes of his past actions that wouldn't go away. It took every ounce of strength to push that aside, to keep my focus on the man standing next to me, the life we were about to start, and to remind myself that no one, not my brother, not my parents, would steal that moment from me. As we exchanged vows, I tried to let go, to block everything else out. I repeated the promises with as much sincerity as I could, determined to make the best of it, even if every now and then I felt a pang of disappointment. This was supposed to be our day, our fresh start, and I held on to that idea like a lifeline, breathing through the tension that I couldn't quite escape. As the reception started, there was a moment where everything felt still. The laughter and music in the background faded as I stood there, holding my glass, ready to make my toast. I had been planning this moment in my head for days, trying to decide if I should even go through with it. But now, as I looked around at the faces of the people I loved and the ones who'd supported me, it felt like the perfect opportunity. I was angry, I was frustrated, and most of all, I was tired of holding everything in. My brother's presence had already shaken me, and despite the happiness around me, I couldn't ignore the truth that had been buried for so long. The secret he shared with my ex, something no one had ever really acknowledged, had been eating away at me, and now it felt like time to finally speak up. For a brief moment, I wrestled with myself. Should I stay quiet and just keep the peace, let the day go on without stirring the pot? Or should I use this moment to finally share the truth, to expose the betrayal for what it was? I knew it would shake things up, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had to speak out. It was my wedding day, and if there was ever a time to stop pretending, to stop burying the past, this was it. As I took a deep breath, I knew this toast wasn't just about celebrating our love. It was about reclaiming my voice and my truth. The silence that had hung over the family needed to be broken, even if it meant stepping into uncomfortable territory. The choice was mine, and in that moment, I decided. It was time to say it. As I stood there, glass in hand, the room fell quieter. I could feel all eyes on me, waiting for my toast. I had planned to keep it light, to express my gratitude to the people who'd been there for me. So I started with the usual thanks. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Your love and support mean the world to me. To my friends, family, and all of you who have helped make this day so special, thank you for sharing in this moment. I smiled, trying to seem calm, as if nothing was off, as if I wasn't holding on to something much bigger. But inside, the weight was growing heavier with every second. The words I had planned to say next were burning in my mind. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I needed to say it. I looked around at the familiar faces of family and friends, some of them smiling, some chatting, all unaware of the truth that had been hidden for so long. Then I turned my gaze to my brother, sitting there in the crowd. It was like the room got smaller, and the words started coming out before I could stop them. And to my brother, I began, my voice steady but firm, who decided to surprise me today by showing up uninvited. Let's remember that some secrets don't stay buried forever. There was a sharp silence. I could feel the tension in the room, like everyone collectively held their breath. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle in, watching their reactions. Some of my family members exchanged confused looks, unsure of what I meant. But I didn't back down. I could feel my hands trembling slightly as I continued. You see, the thing is, some stories, no matter how much we want to hide them, always find their way to the surface. My heart was pounding as I spoke, but I knew I had to finish what I started. A few years ago, my brother here and my ex, well, they were more than just acquaintances. They had an affair, and I found out in the worst way possible. As the words left my mouth, the shock in the room was almost tangible. My brother's face went pale, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me confronting the truth I'd held back for so long. I was finally facing the betrayal. And even though my hands shook, I didn't flinch. It felt surreal to finally speak it out loud, to share that pain with everyone around me. But there was also a strange relief. For the first time, I wasn't hiding it. I wasn't pretending it didn't matter. The truth was out, and it was freeing, even though I knew the aftermath would be anything but simple. The room went dead silent. The kind of silence that makes you feel every heartbeat, every breath, like it's echoing off the walls. I could almost hear the shock in the air, a collective gasp, the weight of my words sinking in. Every face I glanced at seemed frozen in surprise, as if no one could quite grasp what I had just said. I could feel the eyes on me, waiting for something, anything, to break the tension. But it was like time itself had paused. My brother, his face was a mixture of shock, guilt, and something else I couldn't quite place. His eyes were darting around, searching for an escape, but there was no easy way out. He couldn't run from the truth now. He didn't say anything, but his stiff posture, his frozen stare told me everything I needed to know. He was terrified. But it wasn't just him. His wife was the one who really took me by surprise. The moment the words hit her, I saw her face twist in disbelief, her eyes widening as if a sudden realization slammed into her. Her hand flew to her mouth, and I saw the color drain from her face. She was still processing, trying to figure out how much she really knew, how much she had been kept in the dark. The look on her face said it all. She had no idea, and now everything was falling apart around her. I could feel my parents' panic, too. They were both standing there, looking like they had just been caught in a lie. My mom was wringing her hands, and my dad had this strained, tight-lipped expression, clearly trying to keep things under control. They exchanged frantic glances, trying to figure out how to salvage the situation, but it was obvious. They were just as shaken as everyone else. They both looked at me, almost pleading, like I'd made a mistake. But deep down, I knew there was no going back now. The truth was out, and no amount of panic from them would change that. They wanted to calm everyone down, to smooth things over, but the damage was done. The look of fear in their eyes told me they knew the family would never be the same again. And honestly, I didn't think I cared. The moment the truth was out, the atmosphere shifted completely. It was like a wave of shock hit everyone at once. The laughter and chatter from moments ago faded into whispers. I could hear the low murmur of guests talking to each other, trying to process what had just been revealed. Some people were looking at me like I'd lost my mind, others at my brother, clearly confused and trying to piece things together. I felt the eyes of everyone in the room, some filled with judgment, others filled with curiosity, and a few with sympathy. It was overwhelming. I had hoped for a sense of relief after telling the truth, but now I could only feel the weight of what I had unleashed. My brother, however, wasn't just sitting there letting it happen. No, he was immediately trying to defend himself, his voice shaking with panic. "You don't understand," he said, stepping toward me. I didn't want this to come out like this." He kept stammering, his face flushed with embarrassment and guilt. "It wasn't like that, okay? I never meant to hurt you." But nothing he said made a difference. His words felt empty. The damage was done. He wasn't going to erase the truth by talking his way out of it. I stared at him, angry, but also almost pitying him. How could he even think he could explain away what had happened? His actions had already spoken louder than any apology ever could. Then, his wife, standing nearby, must have reached her breaking point. Her face turned bright red, and she backed away, shaking her head. She couldn't take it. I saw her turn and storm out of the room, her hand pressed to her mouth, like she was trying to hold back tears. The sound of the door slamming behind her echoed in the room. She was devastated. I could see it in every movement, every step she took as she left. This was her reality now. The truth of her marriage, the lies she had been living with. My parents, who had been standing silently to the side, now stepped in to try to calm things down. But it was clear that the damage wasn't just between me and my brother anymore. It was affecting everyone. The whole family was caught in the fallout of that moment. And as I stood there, trying to keep my composure, I realized that this was bigger than just my wedding day. I had just opened a door that couldn't be closed. What had started as a celebration was now a battlefield. And there was no going back. Not long after that moment at the wedding, I started hearing the news. My brother's wife had filed for divorce. She couldn't forgive him, not after everything that had come to light. I guess it wasn't just the affair, it was the betrayal, the years of lies that had been hidden under the surface. The news hit me hard. But it wasn't exactly a surprise. It felt strange, almost surreal, to think that his entire life was falling apart because of his own actions. Watching everything unravel in front of him was a bitter mix of satisfaction and guilt. There was a part of me that couldn't deny the satisfaction, though. He had caused so much pain, not just to me, but to her, to our family. He had brought this on himself, and now he had to face the consequences. But even as I felt a small sense of relief, there was another part of me that couldn't help but feel guilty. His marriage falling apart wasn't something I had wanted. I didn't wish for that. But, deep down, I knew that what happened at the wedding was inevitable. The truth had to come out, no matter the cost. It was painful to watch, especially for his wife, who had been blindsided by it all. But in the end, it was his own doing, not mine. The consequences were his to face, just like I had faced mine when I found out about his betrayal. In the days that followed, I could feel the tension building between me and my parents. It wasn't just the shock of the wedding day. This was bigger. The truth about my brother and the affair had rocked the foundation of our family, and no one knew how to handle it. My parents were struggling, their faces worn with a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. They couldn't understand why I had to reveal it so publicly, but deep down, I could tell they were starting to grasp the weight of what had been hidden all these years. They weren't angry at me. Well, not entirely, but I could feel the hurt in their eyes. They had spent so many years pretending that everything was fine, that they could keep this secret buried, and now that it was out, they didn't know how to move forward. There were moments when I regretted it, when I wondered if I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have spared my parents from the pain of knowing that their son had betrayed me, and maybe I could have spared my brother's wife the heartbreak. But then I remembered how long I had carried that weight, how it had eaten away at me for so long. There was a sense of release, a feeling that came from no longer having to keep the secret hidden. For years, I had been drowning in that betrayal, unable to let anyone know the truth, but now it was out, and I didn't have to pretend anymore. Still, the fallout wasn't easy. Our family would never be the same. There was a strain that hadn't been there before. My parents, though they still loved my brother, couldn't deny the reality of what had happened. Their feelings were mixed, hurt, disappointment, and confusion. But underneath it all, there was a slight understanding. They knew why I did it. They knew why I couldn't keep quiet anymore. The years of pain, the lies, it had all come to a head. And even though it had torn our family apart in many ways, I think in some strange way, they understood why I had to finally speak up. As I sit here looking at these wedding photos, I can't help but think about everything that led to that moment, the decisions, the choices, and the fallout that followed. Exposing the truth that day wasn't easy, and even now, I sometimes wonder if it was really worth it. On one hand, I can't deny the satisfaction of finally getting closure. The secret, the lie, it had been a heavy weight on my shoulders for years. There was something freeing about saying the truth out loud, about no longer carrying the resentment that had built up inside of me. But on the other hand, I can't ignore the pain it caused. The hurt that spread to my family, my brother's marriage falling apart, none of that was easy to witness. At the time, I thought that revealing everything would bring relief, but there were moments when it felt like the cost was too high. The damage it did to my family was irreversible, and sometimes I wonder if there was another way I could have handled it, a less destructive path to take. Still, when I think about it now, I realize that exposing the truth gave me something I hadn't had in a long time. Freedom. Freedom from the resentment I'd carried, from the anger that simmered under the surface. It was a necessary step for my own healing, even if it wasn't the cleanest or easiest path. It wasn't about winning or losing, it was about finding peace with what had happened, and I couldn't do that by pretending anymore. Looking back, I've learned a lot from this experience. Family is fragile. Boundaries are necessary, even with those we love most. And secrets, they may stay hidden for a while, but they always come to light in the end. The cost of keeping those secrets, the toll it takes on your peace of mind and your relationships, is something I'll never forget. Maybe some things are better left unsaid. But for me, telling the truth, no matter how painful, was the only way to move forward. And now, for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm finally healing. Looking back at everything that happened, I've come to realize how important honesty truly is, even when it disrupts the peace we try so hard to maintain. Keeping secrets might feel easier at first, but in the end, they only build walls between us and those we care about. Sometimes, it's those uncomfortable, messy truths that we need to face head-on in order to truly heal and move forward. I know it wasn't easy for my family, and it wasn't easy for me either. But standing up for myself, for the truth, has allowed me to reclaim my peace, even if it came with some hard consequences. I've learned that, while protecting family harmony is important, it should never come at the cost of your own self-respect or the truth. To anyone listening who might be going through something similar, I encourage you to think about the long-term impact of holding on to secrets. They might seem small at first, but they can grow into something much bigger. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that ultimately set us free. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. If you've experienced something like this, or if you have your own thoughts, feel free to share them in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. Until next time, take care.